It's not just me. It's the buzzing from the overheads. Those little stinkers. Although I think I'm content with the buzzing because I saw how you and Chris cleaned them out the last time. And I think I'm okay with the non-insurance filing from you guys with the buckets and the ladder and the scaffold. I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. I just, explaining to the insurance company that, though. But we digress. Luke chapter 5. Luke chapter 5. So, it's great that it's now fall. Somewhere. Not here. We have the two seasons of summer and not summer. And we've now transitioned, I think, into not summer. So, Luke chapter 5, verses 1 through 11. On one occasion, while the crowd was pressing on him to hear the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret and saw two boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out of them, and they were washing their nets, getting into the boats, which was Simon Peter's. He asked him to put out a little from the land, and he sat down and taught the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep and let your nets down for a catch." And Simon answered and said, "Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. But at your word I will let down the nets." And when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and the nets were breaking. And they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come out and to help them. And they came and filled both boats, so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw this, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so also were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men." And when they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed him. All right. And specifically here in Luke 5, the calling of Simon, who we will now later on know as Simon Peter or as Peter. And then you also see John and James. And missing from this account in Luke is Andrew. And if you were to look at the other synoptics, that would be the term we use for the other Gospels that align with each other. And Matthew, Mark, and Luke, that's what they are. Matthew and Mark do not record any of what Luke is saying. Matthew and Mark in 4 verses say, and Jesus comes up and says, "Come follow me," and they got up and they left their nets and they followed. And so you begin with the Gospels providing different data. And that's fine. People will see this clearly. Clearly, this was written and the guy wasn't reading the others. No. As you go through and look at the different Gospels, you'll see where one will emphasize one account more. And so instead of looking at it as an aberration, you look at it as more details behind what's going on. And what do we see in the details? Well, first of all, we see the calling of the first disciple. This will be Peter. And you will also see that James and John will soon follow. And for some reason, Luke leaves Andrew out, but that's okay. The other two catch him. So you have the introduction. And if you pick up just in 5, you would think that this is the first time Jesus has encountered Simon. But if you were to go back and read chapter 4, we didn't cover this section, you will see that Simon and Jesus have shared meals together. Jesus has been in Simon's house, and Jesus heals Simon's mother-in-law. You're the only one, weren't you? Hey, what's up with that? No, anyhow. Maybe we just have the same mother-in-law. Anyhow. Yeah. So Jesus heals Simon's mother-in-law of a fever. And if you read the text, you will also see that Simon also sees Jesus cast out demons, and Jesus does things to heal people left and right. And so Peter and Jesus are not strangers. It's not like Jesus walking and goes, "Hey man, you got a nice boat. You want to go bass fishing?" Okay. That's not how it works. And so here in 5, Jesus is teaching, and his fame is growing to the point that he's teaching by a lake, and the crowd keeps pushing in because the crowd gets more and more. Have you ever been in a place where you do the scrum line. You know what I'm talking about? This is usually where people usually end up getting hurt, usually at Walmart when there's only like 3 registers, and just kind of just like pool in these large pools, and then when that other line opens and everybody's looking the other direction, you go, "Oh, look, ponies!" and you sneak over here and get in that. You ever done that? Okay, apparently not. Apparently not. Well, usually what happens is as the crowd gets bigger, it usually begins to move and begins to press in against the certain things. And so that's the case with Jesus. The crowd has gotten so large, listening, wanting to hear what he says, that he is now, with his back against the water, going, "I'm really going to get wet a lot." So he gets in a boat. And we know the story. If you have not been taught this story as a kid, I really feel bad for you. You get in the boat, he goes out to sea, he gets in there, and as soon as he's done preaching, he looks at Simon and he says, "Let's go fishing." Now, ordinarily, for most folks, that'd be like a cool idea. Poor Eric, he's chomping at the... Where is Eric? There he is. Eric, if you're on Facebook, Eric posts make me extremely mad. Because Eric is fishing while the rest of us are working. Teachers. Matter of fact, I bet now just mentioning it, Eric is thinking about fishing.
We're going right after service.
See how that works, folks? You see how that works? But Eric... some guys, all they need is an excuse to go fishing. This is fishing not for fun. This is fishing for occupation. And it's not like you've got a rod and a reel, you cast it out. This is a net, and it's very labor intensive. And you have show up in this verse one of the most common themes you hear in churches all across America. When someone says, "Let's do something this way," you'll hear, "But we've already done it. And it didn't work." Notice what Peter says. Now Peter has seen Jesus heal his mother-in-law. That in itself should be a double miracle there. 1 Peter 1, his mother-in-law healed. 2, Jesus did it. Double miracle. See him cast out demons. See him heal the sick. And Jesus says, "Let's go fishing." And Peter responds with this. "Master, we toiled all night, and we took nothing." Find that odd? I find that odd. And that's typically what happens within our lives today. We will try something, and we'll try it all, and you'll see here that all of this is looked through the eyes of the natural. Jesus says, in a time when it's not proper to fish, knowing that these men have already fished and come up empty, Jesus looks at these men and says, "Go out and put down your nets." That ought to be a clue that something miraculous is about to happen. And Peter's response is, "Well, I tried that. And it didn't work. We tried that. We tried it once and it rained. We tried it once. Lord, I followed what you said, and then nothing happened." Besides, you got to think about, from Peter's perspective, Jesus is a carpenter. If I want a boat, Jesus, I'll ask you to build one. But if I want fishing advice, I'm going to call Eric. And so you have that. We've done it that way. Let me ask you a question. How many of you took no for an answer the first time you asked your significant other out? You can ask Stephanie. I will concede her 3 no's right off the bat. I just ignore the first 3 no's. It's just, if you've ever dealt with me on anything, no is typically not a word that really stops me in my tracks. For some people, no. Oh, okay. They said no. I can't do it. No usually goes rushing by as I just keep going until someone goes, "No! You'll go to jail if you do that." Oh, okay. Well, and ask Steph, I stalked that poor woman for a year. She said no in so many clever ways, like, "I'm moving to Tennessee." And I went, "Yeah, okay, I can still follow you there." "No, really, no." No, really. No, it's okay. I don't mind. I got to get plenty of gas money. How many times did you take no for your first answer to stop? Well, how about the first job you enter an interview for? You go out and you interview and the person says, yeah, you don't really seem like ditch digger type. Well, they said no. I guess I'll never work a day in my life. Yet when it comes to the things of God, and comes to the things of church, it comes to Christ in our life, when the first time we get a no answer, we just go, oh, shoot. It was a no. We tried fishing last night, and we got nothing. Now, Jesus has already tipped his hand. It's in a time when fish typically are not biting, and Jesus goes, let's go fishing. He's already told you. I mean, it's kind of like, in those murder mysteries when the obvious murder weapon is plastered on the screen for like 20 minutes, and the guy and the murderer's like, wow, this is a really cool, interesting weapon. And then you don't see it or the guy ever again, but someone's dead, and it's the guy and the weapon. It's a really easy one to figure out if you pay attention. There are obvious clues. And this is an obvious clue from Christ. The problem is Peter's not listening to the obvious clue. And a lot of times in our own lives, we're not listening to the obvious clues. And what happens is we allow the circumstances and the natural to dictate how we respond to the supernatural within the world. And we come to church with the expectation of the natural. How many of you today showed up today expecting something supernatural to occur today at church? Or did you just show up the way we always show up? No expectation of anything great occurring. No expectation of anything beyond the natural occurring. We're going to sing some songs. We're going to collect some money. The pastor's going to say some words. And we can beat the Methodists to the white meat. And I can meet kickoff in enough time. Apparently we got some Methodists in here. How many of us came here today that had bathed this day in prayer since last Sunday expecting something great? Or did you just show up and go, well, last week we got nothing, so this week we're going to get nothing? Last week, and the week after that, and the week after that, and the week after that, we got nothing. So this week, we tried last week, Jesus, and we didn't get anything. And we worked really, really hard, too. Colton worked really, really hard on his music. And Colton, apparently nobody liked your music, Colton.
Where does the Lord's music?
Well, that is, of course, God, boy, you're being overly spiritual. I appreciate that. But he is right. No, music is not for his edification, it's for the Lord's edification. But how many of us have contemplated that when we come, we expect something wondrous to occur? Or do you just expect the same old, same old? Peter is expecting to haul in. This is what is in Peter's mind. Because notice what he says. Nevertheless, I'll put down the nets. Nevertheless, I'll go through the motions. I will simply just go through the motion and put down a net if it'll just make you happy. You can tell this by his response. You can tell this by the fact that he did not have an extra boat waiting to help with the oversized load. And people go, well, that's a little presumptuous upon God. Folks, you have a God by whom can do anything. I think there's times when we should be presumptuous that God will actually come into his house of worship and cause great things to happen. Amen. The fact that we don't think that reflects what we think about God. And that reflects how we then take God into the world. If you take a defeated Christianity into the world, you will show a world a defeated Christ. And that's not the message of Christianity. Notice what Peter says here. It's amazing. But at your word, I'll let down the nets. When we had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish in their nets, to where the nets were breaking. And they signaled to their partners in the other boats to come help them. Peter's response is, well, he's not expecting anything. He is at the wrong time of the day to catch fish. Notice that it talks about them fishing at the nighttime, which is when it's more successful for them to fish with net. And now they go and say, well, it's the wrong time of day. We're not going to catch anybody. And when we come to God's house, when we come to work in God's church, when we come to God in our life, when we begin with, this is never going to happen, or nothing's going to change, or God is not listening, or God hasn't heard my, or God, we work at it all the time, and we are reflecting what we truly believe about Almighty God. And deep down is God doesn't care. Well, no, he does not care. He doesn't care about you or me. And the fact of the matter is, we miss out on all of it because we have such a low view of God that when he finally does show up, we're shocked and awed, and then 5 minutes later we'll go back to believing like we used to. Watch Peter's life. Same example all the way through when he walks with Jesus. It's like he gets amnesia. No, he's just human. No sooner had he seen Jesus heal his mother-in-law, no sooner had he seen Jesus cast out demons, no sooner who professed who Christ was. The demon went and says, we know you're the Son of God. And Peter went, I fell asleep. He had seen all that. Jesus gets into Peter's boat and then looks and says, put down your net. And Peter goes, we're not going to catch anything. I know. I saw you do great things. But this great thing you can't do. Is that your expectation of who God is? And then you wonder why it doesn't happen. Right? You're shocked that, it can't happen, so when it doesn't happen, you go, didn't happen. But then when it does happen, when you see something that's so of God that you can know it, instead of going, wow, look what God has done, we're so astonished at how overwhelming it is. But then there are those that will look at that and go, we didn't have enough people to handle it. We didn't have enough to care for. One of the things we have going on right now in Good News Clubs, we seem to have more fish in the net than we have workers to help pull in the net. Is that a fair assessment? Now what they could do is say, we have too many fish. Let's just throw some of these fish back. Is that a fair assessment of what we should do with the harvest that God gives us? No. There are some folks that would. Well, you need to maximize your resources to your output, to what you take in. And therefore, we need to do... Now, here's the thing is, we have the need, we have the harvest, yet we don't have the workers. And people, it just requires a lot of time. And it does. We have the same issue over in children's church. We have a lot of kids over there, and yet we don't have a lot of workers there. And we really could use workers both in the Good News Club and in children's church. But yet there are folks that show up every Sunday, never expecting God to do anything, and they miss out on the harvest that are in the lives of young children at Good News Clubs and the lives of young children right over there. And then we wonder why God doesn't do anything in the church. And it's because our expectation of God doing anything in the church is, unless he just blows me off my pew and wows me with fish I can't eat, it's just not going to happen. We get such a harvest in one area that then what happens is people begin to come in. And notice the hyperbole. The boat was at the point of sinking. The boats were full. And I'll give you a great example. A friend of mine, this is back when I was about 260 pounds, before I joined the Army. A friend of mine that was heavier than I was, and another guy was about 190 pounds, were in a 3-person John boat that was rated for 3 people at 385 pounds. Total weight. Not to include cooler gear and poles. Let's just say we were riding pretty low in the water on Lake Joe Pool, which makes you feel really, really good because a boat comes by and you're like, oh, look, now we got a bail. These boats were laying very low in the water. See, the amazing thing of this is, in the midst of them not doing well that night, not only did Jesus demonstrate his power to deliver to them, he also delivered to them a bumper crop that would make these men, because this is their job. That's not what they play at, Eric. This is their job. It's like your job as being a teacher, right? It's a bumper crop. This would have set them for several weeks on end. More fish than they had brought in a long while. They would have had walking around money. And notice Peter's response. Notice what Peter says to Christ when he sees what has occurred. Because Peter knows his lack of faith. Peter knows that he put those nets out just to shut Jesus up. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell on his knees and he said, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man." Another way to phrase this is, what is the Holy One of Israel doing with such a sinful person? Francis Chan has a great series called Basic. We're going through that on our Wednesday night Bible study. And in Francis Chan's statement, he makes the point that a lot of times we don't believe that God is going to do what God does because we don't have a fear of who God is. If we understood the fear of God, we would never once doubt the goodness of God, because at the very beginning, if you go back and you look at both the Proverbs and the Psalms, that concept is very forward. And a lot of times we stop and go, well, what fear really means is reverential respect. No. You go read all the Old Testament passages where people ran into the second person of the triune God or the first person of the triune God, and they all, we're all going to die. That's not reverential respect. That's terror of death. It's fear. First and foremost, it's fear of the very fact that what you are in realization to what he is. You are a wretch. He is holy. This is what drove Luther to the point of the Reformation. Luther would go to his master confessor every morning and say, I need to confess sins to you. And the guy in charge of confession goes, Master Luther, you've been asleep, you had breakfast. What sins could you have committed between then and then? And what Luther struggled with was the fact that God is holy and man is not. God hates sin, therefore God hates man. And he struggled with that because he did not understand grace. He does later on. And so he struggled with the realization of what he was. No matter what he did, he could not be holy. So one of the reasons why you have a good fear of God is so you recognize that what you are. And notice what Peter says. Depart from me. I'm a wicked man. I didn't believe that you could send a harvest. I didn't believe that you could fill nets. I saw the miracles that occurred. I saw the witness there. I know of the goodness of God in the Old Testament. I know all of these things, but when it came down to me in my life, I couldn't believe it. We show the world our depth of faith when we show the world what we believe God can do. Let's finish up. For he and all that were with him were astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so also there was James, the son of James, and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men. Now, this is not an analogy because typically the analogy of a shepherd, because a shepherd takes care of sheep. If you understand what fishermen do, fishermen catch fish to kill fish, to gut fish, to fillet fish, to eat fish. Not necessarily the best analogy for come to Jesus so he can kill you, gut you, fillet you, and then eat you. That sounds more like the gods of other religions, but not quite the God of Christianity. And it's not and that's when the analogy is shoved too far. What he's saying is that just as you caught this fish, the sole purpose, I'm going to put you here on earth to where when I draw men to you, you will begin to begin to build the church. You and the 12 I call. Your profession used to be fishermen. Now you will be fishermen for men. And notice what happens. And when they had brought the boats to land, they left everything. And they followed him. In between this conversation and dialogue, Jesus has the conversation that he has in Matthew and in Mark, where he looks at Simon Peter and he issues the interrogative. Please? Follow me? See, when we read Christ's call of the disciple, we always read them in the interrogative. We're always asking, Jesus is asking them a question. Please? Choose Jesus? Please? When in actuality, if you go and read it in the Greek, it is not a question. It is not a statement of passive will. It is a command. It's not, will you please follow me? It's, come, follow me. I saw a bunch of heads wake up. Come, follow me. It's not, come, follow me. No, dear folks. Christ issued a command that's almost the exact same as when he spoke the worlds into existence. Let there be, and there was. Come, follow me. And immediately, they left everything. When was the last time you gave up everything for your God? When was the last time that when you were called to follow Christ, because all of you in this room, if you are a believer, has been called to follow Christ. When was the last time you left all to follow Christ? Chan's series in Basic is great because he discusses this very issue, how the church has basically shifted away from we follow Jesus as physical activity and action to, well, what we do now is we follow Jesus in our heart. So when Jesus called us, yes, I gave up everything in my heart. And I'm still going to work as though I'm working for me. I'm still not going to be involved in the things of the mission of the church because I'm following Jesus in my heart, not with my hands, feet, arms, legs, and mind. That's great, Brother Bob. You've got folks in Good News Club, but I'm following Jesus in my heart, so I can't help you because I'm following him in my heart. Good luck to you. It's great that we have kids in Awana, but I'm following Jesus in my heart. If I were to be up here and we were to do Simon Says, we're all standing up, and Hunter just sits right there where he's at, and then at the end I go, Hunter's the winner, and y'all are all sitting down because you were touching your nose and things like that. And you go, how's he the winner? He didn't move. I said, well, he was doing Simon Says in his heart. You would all laugh. You would all think that is weird and inane. How can you do Simon Says in your heart? Simon Says, touch your nose. In my heart. Touching my nose. Simon Says, walk around. Yep, in my heart. Walking around. Walk around. Can't trick my heart. They left everything. They just had a bumper crop of fish. This was going to make them, this was a great harvest. They had just, wow, big paycheck. Come, follow me. And they left it. When was the last time you left everything to follow Christ? When was the last time all the pettiness that we deal with in church you leave behind for the sole purpose of following Christ? When was the last time you put aside your selfish desires for things in church to follow Christ? When was the last time you did anything to follow Christ? Because it's action. It's not simply I walk an aisle, I said a prayer, I squirted some tears, and now I'm going to sit on the pew and I'm going to go in my heart, in my heart, in my heart, in my heart. Folks, I can tell you right now, if that's your motto, you better check that salvation. James makes it very clear, faith without works is dead. And dead faith is no faith. You better check that heart. When's the last time you gave it all and walked away? I know many men that left it all. A great one, Jim Elliot. Phenomenal story. When I first read it, I went, wow, what an idiot. You had guns and didn't use them? Man, I would have shot the first 5 of them and then yelled, you want some more of this magic bang stick? Come on. But the Alcan Indians would never have converted to Jesus Christ had he done that. Talk about a man that gave it all. The man that stabbed him in the heart with a lance with all the tracks he lowered was also one of the first men to come to Christ and became a missionary to his own people and led them to knowledge in Jesus Christ. A reference Martin Luther. Martin Luther stands before the most powerful man in the world, the head of the Holy Roman Empire, King of Spain and King of Germany and King of Northern Italy, and looks at him and says, unless I am convinced by Scripture or reason, I will not recant. Folks, that's putting it all on the table because that man can order your death and does. If it wasn't for his noble lord that kidnapped him, he would have been dead. Or are you just taking your stand in your heart? Are you just helping Jesus in your heart? Or are you just following Jesus in your heart? Or are you just sacrificing all to Jesus I surrender in my heart? You look around this church. It's the same as just about any church. 20% of the people do about 80% of the work. We are a little bit better in some areas, a little bit worse in others. That's 80% of the people that are just leaving everything to Jesus in their heart. You're not willing to leave your livelihood behind for Jesus. You're not willing to leave your... Notice that when Peter and James and John leave, they leave completely. They go, hey, we need to keep these fish. Might get hungry later on. Come in handy of feeding 5,000 people. And left the tools of their trade. So they didn't just leave their job. They left the tools of their trade. They left their craft. They left all that they were. And they went and followed Jesus. When I left being a machinist and went to work in Bible college, I had my own tools. And you say, well, that's great. Everybody has their own tools. I had very specialized tools to be a machinist. Still have them. Because to sell them is almost impossible. You'd have to have somebody that did the same type of machine work, and then they're going to know what they're worth. And then since they know that I can't sell them just to anybody, they're going to go, I'll give you $50 for them. So I might as well keep them. So I had this nice rolling chest full of very fancy and expensive tools that if you were to break into my house, people watching on video, you couldn't get anything for at a pawn shop. Just saying right now. And they sit there. I rarely use them. And they sit in my yellow building. So I'm not a machinist anymore. I left being machinist and I followed after the call of Christ to be a minister. Could I go back to being a machinist? Oh, I could go back and use those tools, but it is so long removed from what I was. I'd be inefficient. I'd be starting at the bottom rung again. Might as well start a different profession if I ever left the ministry. Do you follow Jesus and you put away the trades and the tools? Well, Jesus didn't call me to be a pastor. Jesus didn't call me to a missionary. No, Jesus called you to be a believer, and He called you to take the gospel message into all the world. Those passages of the Great Commission aren't for me. They are for you. They are not simply, well, the pastor goes. No, they are for you to go, and you are to follow after Christ. That's why you're here. And so it doesn't mean, well, I got to sell everything I own and then follow after Christ. But it does mean that anything that impedes you from doing the work of Christ, your job, your livelihood, all the things that get in the way, those things you leave behind and follow Him. This is the problem with the rich young ruler. Master, what must I do to be saved? Do this, I've done that since I was a child. Take all that you have and give to the poor. And the text says he did it, right? No. The text records that he walked away sad because he was much in possession. Sometimes we allow our possessions and our things and our pursuit of those things to keep us from following after Christ. And so the way we justify that is we use the "in my heart" excuse. And the fact of the matter is, in your heart all day long won't help the kids that Brother Bobby has at Good News Clubs or the folks that Joyce has at her Good News Club. The "in your heart" defense won't help those kids that are over there in children's church while you sit and soak up air on the pew. It won't help the kids in Awana that we have. It won't sit and help their neighbor who is dying and going to hell because, I don't want to lose him as a friend. When was the last time you put all on the altar for Christ? I want you to think about that. As the praise band comes to lead us, there are some of you here today that have never placed anything on the altar. You're not even His to know to put it there. I'd love to sit and talk to you about the wonderful grace of our Lord and Savior. And there are some of you here today that have been in your hearting long before I was born. It's what we call nominal Christianity. I want you to do a gut check moment and ask yourself if nominal Christianity is the path that Christ called you to.